sato ma sadagamaya tamaso maham jyotir gamaya mrityor mam amrita gamaya avir maedhi rudra yatte dakshinam mukha te namaham pahinityam. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality, and reach us through and through ourselves, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. So my subject this morning is, what is life? We're going to be talking about our higher self and spiritual life, and our lower self and the life of the natural man. And our controlling question is, how did the Atman become the Jivatman? How did the infinite, divine, immortal soul come to be born, eat, metabolize food, grow, maintain homeostasis, reproduce, and die? Let's look at the human condition and how far we have fallen from our true nature. The human life form, well, is a jiva. That means a living being. A jiva, whether it's an ant, or it's an animal, or it's a plant, or it's a human, is a jiva. A jiva is like a reflection of the sun in a drop of water. A jiva is like the space in a pot, unmindful of its universal space all surrounding. The jiva, the bound soul, is like a light hidden under a bushel of heavy wrappings and layers of habits and of conditioning. The jiva, the bound soul, it's like a bird flying free, and then a fly flew in and flew into a cage. There it is in a cage, fluttering around, trying to get free, not knowing that the door is actually open, but caught there and trapped in that small space. The jiva is like a wave in the ocean that's forgotten its identity with the universal waters of the ocean, pushing and moving back and forth, fighting against the other little waves, and these huge waves threatening its survival. This is the jiva, the bound soul, subject to the law of causation, the law of karma, which locks us into behavior patterns and conditioning so that we are not free to move. This is the human condition. And it's perhaps, in my feeling, the best explanation and illustration is that of is Plato's allegory of the cave. But we've discussed that in detail on other occasions. So I'm just going to leave that image with you, set that aside, and let's go on to another image that kind of illustrates our predicament as living beings. And that is one of the favorite of existentialist philosophers. And that is to compare life, human life, in this world of Maya with a drama in an absurd theater. Now, the absurd drama, as you know, it's a genre of theater. It's tragic, but it's also sadly humorous. It's so tragic, it's kind of funny. It's kind of like, well, we're all looking for something. We all want to find something important in our life. Imagine a person who's trying to find something by looking very carefully over and over in an empty box. See, that would be absurd. It would be absurd to try to find a mink coat in a 5 and 10 cent store, or trying to catch a trout in a mud puddle. That would just be silly. That would be kind of like trying to find the absolute in the relative, trying to find the eternal in the transient, trying to find meaning in a meaningless world of Maya. You would think that the most obvious thing, for looking for something, the most obvious thing would just be ourself. We're in an ongoing, lifelong identity crisis, trying to find out and to understand who we are. And we're like a man walking around and asking others, who am I? And it's like the eyes trying to see themselves, or like a hand trying to grasp itself, or like a dog running around in circles, chasing its own tail. These are all images of the absurd condition that's the human experience. Philosophers like to discuss the old Greek myths of Sisyphus. Sisyphus was the king of Corinth in ancient Greece. And, he ruled wisely and well, but he had difficulties getting along with the pantheon of gods. And, for example, on one occasion, Zeus, the king of the gods, abducted the daughter of the chief architect of the city of Corinth and took her away. And the people barely made any outcry, but Sisyphus stirred them up. And he led a protest against Zeus and forced him to return the daughter to her family. And it made Lord Zeus very vexed, and angry. On another occasion, he saw the Lord of Death was stalking his kingdom. And people were dying everywhere. And Sisyphus got very tired of that. And so he just hunted down Death, put him in chains, and threw him in a dungeon. And time passed, and the Lord Thanatos, the ruler of the netherworld, began to see no one is coming. Everything's empty. There's no influx, no new customers in the underworld. And he complained to the gods. Well, Sisyphus grew older. Before he died, knowing his predicament and his probable fate, he told his wife, don't bury my body. Just leave it by the side of the road in the marketplace. And sure enough, soon he died, and he was sent into the netherworld. But then, at a short period of time, he sent out a message to Lord Zeus. Dear sir, it seems that my body was not buried at all properly. Can I please return to Earth just for a short period of time, just to see I get proper burial? And Zeus thought, yeah, well, that's probably a proper thing to do. So Sisyphus returned, buried the body, and of course, the sun was shining and the birds were singing, and he decided to live on. And he lived on for years afterwards. Finally, when he did die, the gods sentenced him to a punishment in hell of Tartarus, where he was condemned to push a heavy stone up a steep hill, the top of a mountain. And there at the top of that mountain, that huge heavy boulder would rock back and forth, and then of its own weight, it would roll down to the bottom again. And his fate was to roll that rock, because the gods thought that there could be no more terrible fate for a human being than just to do meaningless work over and over throughout eternity. So, that's the old myth of Sisyphus, the story of us all. And that's the plight of the jiva. There was another king of ancient India. His name was Yayati. Now, Yayati was, he loved life. He enjoyed all the pleasures of life. He was something of a hedonist. And he just lived with intensely enjoying all of the enjoyments of life. To one day, he found that he was getting old. And he was nearing death. And he thought, I still have so many things I haven't done, I haven't seen, I haven't gone to see them. And so he pleaded with his children. He had 3 sons. And he asked the sons, won't one of you exchange bodies with me so that I can live again, live longer? And the eldest said, no way. The middle said no. But the youngest son said, yes, father, I'll do that. And sure enough, they arranged a ritual. They said their mantras. And the soul of the young prince came out and entered into the body of Yati, and the old king, into the body of the prince. Soon they bury the body of the king. And now the real king, now in that young, youthful form, began again to enjoy his life. And he lived for year after year with all the pleasures. Till finally, after many years, one day he found himself standing before the mirror. And he noticed that his skin was becoming wrinkled and his hair was becoming gray. And he noticed the onset of old age. And then he looked within his heart and he realized that he still had so many intense desires to live and to enjoy life. And he was struck. And that's the contrast between that old form and that young stream of desire struck him very hard. And he became contemplative. And he became thoughtful of all of his life. In fact, of his double round of life of enjoyment. And there he uttered a famous verse, Najatu kama kamanam upabhogena shamyati havisha Krishna vartmaiva bhuyo eva vibhardate. That's just like an old verse from the Puranas that says that fulfillment in life does not come through the satisfaction of desire, but rather, on the contrary, the desire only increases the more, like fire when butter is poured upon it. So these are some images of the human condition. And, well, we could say, well, that sounds kind of pessimistic. But that's not the whole of the story. There's more to the story. There is a lower world, and there is a higher world. The Greek philosopher Plato gives us the image of a dividing line. Imagine a horizontal dividing line between the lower and the higher reality. The higher is one. Below the line, many. Above the line, absolute. Below the line, relative. Above the line, real. Below the line, unreal. Above the line, eternal. Below the line, changing. Above the line, immutable. Below the line, changing and mutable. Above the line, knowledge, true knowledge. Below the line, opinion. That's the division between the lower world and the higher world. In the Vedanta language, Sri Ramakrishna, we could say, this is the world of avidya, maya, and the world of vidya, maya. Now, so far we've been talking about avidya. We've been talking about the lower world, the condition of life of the natural man. That is, we gave the example here of the theater, the absurd theater, and of Sisyphus, and Iati, and of the lower world, in which everything, that is the relative world, this dualistic world of our experience, which Vedanta is called this world of Maya, the world of our life experience, the phenomenal universe of our experience, which is ever changing and ever morphing into something else and different. And of course, as part of the human predicament is that we want purpose. We want to find meaning. We want knowledge. But how can you find knowledge in a stream of change where everything is in flux? There's nothing is eternal. There's nothing is stable. Nothing has any permanent identity. That's very frustrating. This is the world of, this is the world as we experience the world. In yoga psychology, this is the experience of the ego mind. The ego mind, the yoga psychology, that just separates our psyche, that is ourself, right? We're identified with our body, yes, but really we're identified with our mind and our body. We are a mind, we have a body, maybe we have a soul, but basically we think we're the mind. And yoga psychology tells us that really there are two levels to the mind. There's the lower mind, and there's the higher mind. The lower mind is called the manas. That's the word that we usually, when we say mind, man, M-A-N, that's the thinking we call man. Man is named. The first man was called Manu because he was a thinking being. But the thinking there that they're referring to is the thinking of the manas, the lower mind, which is concrete. It's thinking, but it's concrete default thinking of the wandering mind. It's ourselves, most of our life, on automatic pilot. It's the perceptual mind, interacting with the inputs of the sensory world, and being driven primarily, these are the three levels of the manas, by the kama, what the Buddhists call the kama manas, that is the desire mind. And so driven by desire, responding to the world of sensory experience, thinking kind of in a automatic, conditioned, unreflective way. We stumble through life. And as a result, we often find ourselves in that predicament described before. But within us, there are the mind. Within us, there is a higher world. These are two worlds, we call them a world, call them a realm, call them a sphere, or when we talk about it, lower and higher, we're really talking here about inner worlds. But why not? There are also higher worlds, outer worlds. Let's talk about them as higher worlds within ourselves. And this is called in yoga psychology, that's our higher mind, which is called the buddhi, which is our intelligence. Cosmic intelligence of the universe appears in man as reason. And reason, when it is involved, becomes intuition. And so these two, reason and intuition, are the highest forms of the mind, by means of which we can achieve knowledge. Let's look here at this higher world within us. and contained within the jiva of every jiva in the universe. We were reading this morning about the Vedas, contained in the soul of an ant. So let's think about the higher world. What is the higher world? Well, there's a gross. Let's just talk about, there's a gross, whether it's inner or outer. There's always going to be 3 levels. There's going to be gross, subtle, and causal. Now the causal, the gross, that is the Mahakasha space. Then there's mental space. But then there's causal space. In Vedanta, it's called the space of consciousness, Chidakasha. Within that space, we could call it the universal mind of the impersonal God. Within that high space of our own consciousness, there are it's like knowledge is like a pyramid. The peak of the pyramid are the universal, eternal, uncreated, cosmic ideas of the Vedas, the eternal knowledge of all mankind. Going down in the hierarchy, now we're talking about that causal space of the universe, the causal space of our own psyches, of our own soul. All of the souls, all of the souls of the gods and the goddesses, and the souls of all humankind. Not animal souls, not plant souls, only human souls, that high causal realm. This is a world or a sphere or a domain of law, where are all the physical laws and moral laws and the natural laws and spiritual laws of the universe exist and are real in that higher space of our own consciousness. That's where reside all the abstract objects, things like moral truths, numbers, sets, truth, goodness, beauty. These are all things that are real. You can't see them, you can't touch them, you can't grasp them with the intellect, but they're real, and they exist in this higher realm of our own higher psyche. It's in that, now we're talking about the buddhi, or the intelligence within us. That is the consciousness within us, we could say. Within our own consciousness. There too, in this higher realm, are all of the objects of the Platonic worlds. That is to say, all of the eternal, ideal, perfect forms of everything that we perceive. Things which are, those real perfect forms exist, and each one exists. It's real, it's eternal, it's unchanging, it is universal, necessary, and certain in all possible worlds. Those ideas are the reference of all of our language as we speak. When we speak and we identify things like a tree or a flower or something, we're referring not to that changing flux that we see before our vision, our visual space, but we're really referring to this abstract Platonic form within the psyche. That's the reference of all of our language. That's what gives us knowledge, because it never changes, because its knowledge means knowledge is truth. Truth doesn't change. That's why this higher world is the world of Vidya Maya. Vidya is knowledge. We talked about avidya Maya, the lower mind, what we learn and experiences that we have when the ego is identified with the lower mind. That's the lower knowledge in quotes, because it's not really knowledge. It's just opinions, probabilities, guesses, speculations. That's avidya Maya. The vidya here means individual ignorance. Avidya is that which causes us to look out and to take this illusion of this world of Maya as being real. Avidya, now we're talking about avidya Maya, is that state of mind and experience of life that we have when we feel ourselves, feel as if we are separate selves. When we look out and we think that the world of the many is different from God. We think that the world of the many and the world and the one are different. Or that's called avidya. That's the lower mind. That's our perspective from the lower mind, the ego mind. The higher mind, however, the buddhi, that's our aspirational goal. Our aspiration in spiritual life is going to be to raise our consciousness to the higher mind, so that we begin to see things differently, and we begin to identify with this higher world, the spiritual world, the world of spiritual truths. This is called Vidya Maya. All of these things that we listed there, these are all sources of knowledge associated with truth and knowledge, and they enable us to achieve liberation, and they enable understanding and beginning to see life through that perspective, inspires us to spiritual growth. That's why we want. That's our where we want to focus our mind on this higher mind of avidya Maya. Now, our question. Let's go back to our first question of this morning. How did the Atman, that is, how did the soul become the living soul? Because according to philosophy, Swami Vedarupananda, Inspired Talks, tells us that in this higher world, this Platonic world of universals, there is an ideal you. That is your soul, yourself, unencumbered by all the ideas and the false beliefs that we've piled on ourselves, called upadhis. Our all sense of these ideas that I'm the body, I'm mine, I'm conditioned to this and that. All that is overlayment. Our real self is our soul, and that exists in this still pure, perfect, eternal, in this world. Now, how did we fall into this condition? Well, let's imagine that one day your soul, that is, you're a bodiless intelligence, and you're perfect and you're immortal, and one day you're standing on the balcony of this higher world, you're looking down into the darkness, and you keep looking, and what do you see down there? You see maybe a few twinkling lights. And so you look more carefully, and you begin to focus on it. And what do you see? You see some things are happening down there. Oh, it looks like something like a carnival. Yeah, that's it. It's a carnival. And you can see the tents, and you can see all the twinkling lights, and now you can hear the music, and you can smell the popcorn. And the mind is now becoming fascinated and interested in that, what's going on down there. And you remember how in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 2nd chapter, it says that whenever you think about a sense object, the next thing to arise, dhyato vishayan pungsa sangas teshu pajayate. The next thing to arise, you think about a sense object, the next thing to arise is attachment. You get a little desire, comes into your mind. I wonder what that is. Curious, inquisitive. I'm interested. So like that, this disembodied soul became interested in this goings on down there. And so he thought, why don't I go down and see what's going on? And so he just flew down through the air. And he arrived on the earth, but just because he's in just intelligence, when he incarnated himself, because intelligence can't do anything. So he found himself in a kind of a crippled body. And how could he live his life there? He can't look around and do what he wants. And so there he sees, by the side of the road, there is a blind man. And so he went over and crawled over there. The blind man said, "Sir, I see that you're blind. You and I'm crippled. And, maybe you and I could get together. Maybe we can make a team. We make a good couple. Why don't we team up, and I'm going to ride on your shoulders. And we'll do a walk, and I'll guide us around. And like this, we can make a life for ourselves." Blind man said, "It sounds pretty good." And so the Jivatma was born. That's the story of Kapila, the first philosopher in Sankhya philosophy. It's not my story. It's a fanciful, silly story, you may say, but it contains a truth. The higher became the lower. How did that happen? In Indian philosophy, we read the story about the great Lord Vishnu. This is a similar story, putting it in a little different way. That is the great Lord Vishnu, the king of the world, ruling the world. And he one day became, sitting there, he began to look down at the worlds over which he ruled, and he zeroed in on the earth, and he began to scope and zero in on a farmyard. And he's getting interested, and he's getting fascinated about what's going on down there. And there he sees a pig is in the farmyard, and his whole consciousness zeroes in on that pig, and he thinks, that'd be interesting. I wonder what it'd be like for me to be a pig. And so Vishnu, his thought immediately becomes reality. He became embodied in that form, and he began living. And he was so happy, because all during the day, he just lounged around and basked in the sun. And when he got too hot, he went over and he wallowed in a mud puddle. And like that, time passed. Weeks passed, months passed. And the gods looking down, seeing this, that the king, what's going on down there? Everything is coming unraveled. So many affairs need to be attended to. And so they came down and pleaded with Vishnu to please stop this. Come back to your eternal home. And Vishnu said, why? I'm perfectly happy here. I'm enjoying my life. And the gods were at their wits' end. Finally, they thought, they appealed to the great Lord Shiva. Please go down, see if you can do something. Shiva went down, saw the situation, saw the predicament, and with his mighty trident, he smote the body of that pig and just split it in two. And out of that body came Vishnu, laughing and laughing. Oh, what a funny joke. He saw the whole thing and flew back up into his kingdom in the sky. So, well, how did the Atma become the Jivatma? How did we get embodied? Similarly. And you see here in the story, did Vishnu die when he was smote by the trident? No. The only thing that died was the physical body. That is a Christian theology. It's called, the Swamiji was fond of this phrase, the old man must die. That's Christian theology. That means the old man here means the natural man, the lower mind, the manas, the ego mind. Somehow it has to die, or it has to be attenuated. It has to be transcended. The natural man is the man who's prone to sin, into selfishness. Sri Ramakrishna would call this the worldly man, the earthbound, sense-bound person who just prioritizes sense pleasures and ego gratification. In yoga psychology, we call it the ego mind. This part of us has to be transcended in order for us to come into our real, true nature, that which makes us human, that is our higher power to gain knowledge. And so here we can see kind of our question about the contrast between the higher and the lower. And once we fall into the condition of the lower mind, the ego mind, driven by desire and by unruled emotions and by default automatic pilot, unreflective thinking, once we're in that condition, then we'll suffer. And once in that condition, as Lord Buddha describes life, all is suffering, all is transient, all is empty. But that's a vidya maya, but there's a higher world. There's a higher world where we can know the truth about ourselves, about the reality, about our nature, about our true nature, where we can look through and see through all the illusions of our life, and we can cut through all of the false beliefs that we have, and we can come to see ourselves as we really are, and the world also as it really is, and not looking through a glass darkly, but seeing clearly. And that's the transition that we want to make. And that's why Patanjali in the second pada of the Yoga Sutras advises us as spiritual aspirants that we have to give up this clinging to life. Clinging to life. By life there, it means the life of the lower mind. The life between birth, the short period of time between birth and death. The life of the senses. The life of the natural man. And let that go. The old man has to die, be attenuated. Set him aside, and rather grasp onto the higher conception of ourself, our true nature. Once we release the one, the true nature is self-luminous. It reveals itself by itself. You don't have to do anything to be spiritual. You already are spiritual. All you have to do is to remove the obstacles. And this is our purpose and in spiritual life, is to move from that lower conception of ourselves to a higher and truer idea of our true nature. Om Dyo Shantihi Antariksham Shantihi Prithvi Shantihi Apa Shantihi Oshadaya Shantihi Vanaspataya Shantihi Vishwe Deva Shantihi Brahma Shantihi Saravam Shantihi Shantireva Shantihi Same Shantiredhi Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. Om, peace is in heaven, peace is on the earth, peace is in the sky and in the waters. The herbs and plants and trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. May this eternal universal peace enter our souls and beings. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.